Chris, thank you so much for joining, man. Appreciate having you on.
I appreciate you asking me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. And just as a bit of an introduction, Chris Enright, I'll let you talk about your own history a little bit. But you are one of the founding partners of Align Capital, and one of your partners, Jack, was on with us, and we had a great conversation with him. And so I kind of I figured, you know what, man, let me impose, let me continue imposing on the executives of the line, and ask you to join us, and you're kind enough to accept. And much like every other person that we've asked to join us, it's again because you are a man that I respect tremendously, both on the professional and personal level. So it does mean a lot that you're here. So just to get us started, man, please just tell us a little about yourself, your background, however much you want to share. Love to hear it.
Sure. Well, again, thanks again, Ali. And the feeling is very mutual. I've got the opportunity to meet some of the people that you've worked with, that you continue to work with, and everybody just has just wonderful things to say about the quality of the business that you've built, and how much you care about your clients. So kudos to you as well.
Thank
Uh,
you. I appreciate that.
I come from a very humble background. Everybody has sort of a backstory. Mine is probably similar to a lot of people. I'll be 50 this year, and back when I was very young, my parents divorced, and it just seems when I tell this to people, they look at me like I have two heads because it's just very different than what they were accustomed to. When my parents divorced in 1975, and I was going through elementary school, I went to a school of K to 8, 500 plus students. I was the only kid whose parents were divorced in the whole school.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I,
Different times for sure.
different times for sure. So I would sit down with the guidance counselor, and they would say, "Is everything okay?" And I would say, "Yeah, everything's fine." My parents got along really well even after the divorce. My father, who's no longer with us, was an incredible person, and a real positive influence on me. He struggled with mental illness right up until 2000 when he passed at the age of 50, but taught me a lot
Wow.
of things
So
about,
young.
yeah, very, very, very young. And again, the mental illness, really took its toll.
Ay, ay,
Um,
ay.
but he taught me a lot about just basics in business that I still use today, about looking people in the eye, and your word is your bond, and always I treat people with this with the same level of respect that you would like to be treated with. A little bit of the golden rule, and throughout my career in founding a firm when I was in my early 20s, selling that firm to one of the big life insurance companies, to where we are today, just recently coming through a transaction where we've partnered with one of the largest asset management firms in Canada. Really tried to surround myself with people that, as most, that are smarter than me, but at the end of the day, they have a very common belief system in terms of they're doing things for the right reasons, that they're very much really interested in improving the lives of those around them. And that's really what has not just got me into this business, but kept me in the business, because it really, for us at Align Capital, it's about improving investor outcomes. And we spend an inordinate amount of our time thinking about ways that we can create a better platform for our network of independent advisors, so that they can not just compete, but excel. And when I say creating bandwidth for their practice, it's to accomplish two main goals, and that is dependent on the advisor. The first is, if we create a better platform and create bandwidth for them, they'll have more time to do things outside of business. And maybe they're very interested in doing other things in their community, or spending more time with their family, or reading, or doing their hobbies, or whatever is interesting to them. And I think that that's a real positive outcome. The other, which to me is equally as important, is that they have already achieved a certain level of life balance, but now with extra time, they feel a real need and want to help even more people. And from our standpoint, that is the most important thing, because I think that there's a real lack of good quality independent advice in the marketplace today. And I think that we do a very, very poor job of teaching some of the basics of financial planning in our school system. And I think that advice is probably as important now as it's ever been, because I think that there's a lot of information out there, but it's a little bit of information, and
Right.
you can, it's kind of a crude analogy, but if you can read up about from the internet and from books onto how to take your appendix out, but no one would actually do that to themselves. You would go to
Right.
a professional to do that. And I think that the investment products are getting a lot more complicated. The system has been designed for people to, to have, just with the basic demographics with life expectancy. I mean, the system was designed so that you work till 65, and the average life expectancy was 75. So you had to provide for 10 years of retirement income. In Canada today, if you see 65, you have better than a 50-50 shot of seeing 90. So providing for 25 years of retirement income,
Very
a low
different.
interest rate environment, is very, very hard to do. So we are doing the best that we can at Aligned to create platforms so that those really good independent advice providers can continue to serve Canadians well.
Chris, you said a lot of awesome things that I'm going to go back to and nitpick on, man, because I want to get more
Sure.
out of them. Okay. So, the name of this podcast is Life's Golden Nuggets, and it's supposed to be like a humorous take on lessons learned along the way. So, that's what I'm going to focus on the most. So, you already shared a bunch of golden nuggets, like your word is your bond, treat others as you want to be treated, work with people that are not only like smart, intelligent, and you can trust, but who have the same core values. Like all these things are big things that I think we need to get back to and maybe talk about. But before we do that, you left a little sweet gap in your story that I got to pick at a little bit.
Sure.
And as you said, in the 20s, you had a firm, and then you sold it, and then you went on from there. And so, like, that's a pretty badass thing to just say and gloss over so quickly, man. To have a firm in your 20s that you sell, I got to get more of that in. And so, a lot of the audience that we have here are younger individuals. So for them, it's probably going to be a question of like, wait a minute, how'd you get into this? How'd you even start your firm? How'd you get it up and running? How'd you sell it? So give us a bit more in that. Obviously, understand the stories more than just something you can cram into to a few minutes, but love to get a bit more details there.
Sure. I mean, I think it's starting my own firm was a decision that I made. I think I was 24. Yeah, so I was 26 when I started my first firm. And that was a firm that I had was a financial advisor. I had a network of clients. I was relatively successful, but I wanted to start my own firm because I wanted to control my destiny. So I didn't want to
So
be.
how'd you become a financial advisor to begin with? Like what led you into that world?
What led me into that world, and it's kind of a funny story, is it was a girl. So I had was going through to eventually at the time was interested in studying law,
Right.
and I had done a couple of years of poli sci at U of T, and I met this wonderful girl whose father was an executive at TD Bank. And he took me aside and said, if you're going to date my daughter, you need to learn some things about, finances, because, what you want to do with getting married and having kids, these things are expensive. So he told me to take the Canadian securities course. And at
Right.
the time, I'd never even heard of it. So I took it, and I really liked it. I really, really enjoyed it. And from there, I decided that this was something that I wanted to really sink my teeth into. I joined a firm as an investment advisor. went through the rookie school and built up a book of business. And then within 4 years, I decided that I was ready to branch out on my own. So set up my first shop, my own shingle. We got registered as our own dealer in 1999. Built that from my small book of business I had a partner and one other advisor in the office. And we built that up from 1999 to 2006. When we sold in 2006, there was about 200 advisors, and
Wow.
we were managing collectively about 3.5 billion of assets.
Good for you.
Sold that to Industrial Alliance in 2006 and joined the IA group of companies. I met some wonderful people there. They gave me some very great opportunities to continue along my sort of journey in wealth management. I became I was the senior vice president in charge of wealth management distribution. So I was sort of the acquisition guy at IA from 2006 to when I left to start Aligned in 2012 with Jack and Mike and a couple of other partners. And yeah, we've had a ball. We've had a ball.
That's awesome, man.
The reality though is that, I mean, I feel like not a lot has changed. The focus and the why we got into the business and why we were doing things is the same today as it was
Right.
back in 99 when we started.
That's pretty awesome, man. When you first started to build your book as an advisor, so for anyone who doesn't know, there's various kinds of professionals in the financial industry that provide advice and support with you and your finances. So you could go to a bank and meet with a financial planner who could help with your finances. There's advisors, there's portfolio managers, there's various kinds of professionals, depending on your need, that you can talk to who deal with your finances. An advisor is one of those professionals. And one of the things you have to do if you become an advisor is you have to build up your book, which means you have to get people who are going to trust you and put some money with you that you will help them through the investment process. And that's a pretty hard thing to do, man. I mean, if you just, especially when you're 24, 25, 26, doesn't matter. You go to somebody and you're like, hey, I'm an advisor, leave some money with me. I'll help you through investing. And you're like, who the fuck is this kid who's going to help me like with my investments? Right. So like, that's a pretty hard thing to do. And then for you to build a book is pretty impressive, but then to take that book, take it independent, bring in other advisors and build it up to $3.5 billion over 200 advisors.
Mhm.
Hats off, sir. That's pretty amazing. So when you started to build your book, what were some of the things you were doing to build the book, man?
I mean, back in the early days, like in the mid to late 90s, it was everything. It was a different environment because interest rates were on their journey to where they are now, which has been a slow and steady decline. So we would meet lots of people that were coming out of GICs that, when they bought the GIC 5 years previously, maybe it was 7, 8, 9% interest. And they were looking to renew at half of that. So they were looking for alternatives. So it opened up the door for, people in my age or when I was advising clients. There was lots of people that was looking out for alternatives to what they were used to doing at the bank. I took a couple of different approaches. I mean, I was very active with, I used to teach a marriage prep course, working with some of the people in the church that I went to, working with the young couples as they were starting out. So I would do an hour on the basics of financial planning, how to negotiate a mortgage, what an RSP was, because at the time, lots of people didn't even know what an RSP was.
That's brilliant, man.
Yeah, so I started off that way, but I mean, it became clear that what I really liked to do was I liked managing the business. I was
Right.
a pretty good advisor. I wasn't the best advisor. I wasn't
Right.
the best. I wasn't the best at structuring portfolios, but I put people on a good plan. But it became obvious that what I wanted to do was run the firm and create the platform. So those
Right.
really good advisors could go and hang their shingle with my shop and continue to do the great work for their clients.
That's brilliant, man. But I love that, like you took all those steps, right? Like, because a lot of times you feel like people think it's magical. Where like, oh yeah, these guys they must have come from like rich families. Oh yeah, this guy must have had
Yeah.
all these connections. And then you dig deep and you're like, no, this guy didn't come from that background. He went
Mhm.
to the church groups. He sat there and met with couples one at a time, promoted like good education.
Mhm.
Through that, gained legitimate trust, and then started building a network, and through that network started to build a book. So like all the steps, like these are all slow and small steps but you took, but these are like, to me, this that's where the beauty of it. It's like when I see you now at 50 and you've obviously been very successful for a very long time, I love it and I appreciate it. But what I'm interested in, I want to take it back to that 20-year-old who's hungry, who's like, how am I going to do this shit? And he figures out a way and he keeps pushing and he keeps pushing. So I appreciate you sharing that, man. That's really great. And so now just to touch on something else you said your father was a big influence, and obviously, he had his struggles and whatnot. But one of the things that you said you learned from him was your word is your bond. And that's one of those key things that like keeps coming up.
Mhm.
And I kind of stay focused on it a little bit because there's a little bit of a notion, especially with like some of the movies that I also like a lot, that talk about like business being business and personal and all this shit. Like at the end of the day, it's all personal, man. At the end of the day, businesses are built by people, and yes, it's different in that you shouldn't be as emotional about it. You should be more methodical and this, logical. I get that part of it. Of course, your business is going to be different than your personal life, but at the same time, it is you who builds this business, and your personality, your character, your core values are going to be part of that business, just like they are part of your life. And what you said right now in terms of your word being your bond is something that I really stress all the time, because the foundation of any of these things you do is support and trust, and the only way to do that is through this idea, this honesty, and this idea that like what you say is what you live by. And so I'd love to get your thoughts on how, like, where you would place that on the scale of importance. Like, is that one of your absolute non-negotiables when it comes to dealing with people, and who you would even allow to come into your circle?
Yeah, I mean it's right at the very top of the list, and I mean I certainly understand what you're saying. We do hear a lot about business is business. Um, for me, what I've found successful is when you are able to make that really strong emotional connection with someone that you're working with, you get this feeling of it's us against the world,
Right,
and together it is amazing what a group of people like that are able to accomplish. I mean, you did have, my chief operating officer, Jack Mastromati, on with you another one of your podcasts. I mean, Jack is like my brother. I would go to war for Jack, and I think Jack would echo the same. We are interested in being there to support each other, and what we're trying to do is create this almost like a family unit of people that are all working
right,
toward the same goal. It's a lot harder to do that, Ali, as the business continues to grow,
of
because you
course.
just don't have the time to make those real strong emotional connections. And there does need to be a little bit of, maybe a little bit of forced distance between, staff and the management team of the firm. I've just always taken the view that I'm just more comfortable, and I've been more successful being part of a very flat organization
Right.
where everybody understands where everybody else is coming from, and everybody is also very quick to be able to rally around somebody else if they're not having a good day or they're going through something
Right.
outside of the workplace, because I think at the end of the day that's what's the most important, because you know what, life's pretty short.
I'm with you there, and it's the exact same thing with our business. I think we try and keep it very flat. we all get to wear the captain's hat. We all get banned. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. We support each other, and I think that that's the right mentality. I agree with you. Um, but one thing that I find pretty interesting is that at the end of the day, motivation for people uh, only goes so far when it's based on those bullshit metrics, like even money, it goes so far. But when you get somebody, like you said, who actually cares because they care about you as a human being, then all of a sudden you change that equation. And you can't fake that either. Like, in saying that, I genuinely like the closest friends to me are the people that I work with. They're all in some ways super close to me. I love them all. They're all like brothers and sisters in a sense. Some of them I grew up with. We went to school together. Some of them, one of them I'm godfather to his daughter. The other ones are like my best friends. So I totally get that, and I feel like I get exactly where you're coming from in terms of like creating that culture. But then how do you keep that going? Because like your firm is quite large, and I mean it's growing all the time. How do you continue as the team grows? As flat as you may keep it, as much as you mingle with everybody, you only have so many hours in the day. Like you can't talk to like 400 people every day. It's just
Yeah,
reality.
yeah. I mean, I think part of it, how we've tended to deal with is we've brought in other people at that sort of
Hmm.
mid-manager and manager level that again share the same values. So if I can have a really deep relationship with everybody that's on my executive team and everybody that's a senior manager, what I try to do is encourage that senior manager to have those same similar type of
Right,
relationships,
right,
down
right.
down the line.
That makes perfect sense. Now, aside from your father and his significant influence, have there been other people that have come in your life in a sense? I mean, in that girl's father apparently played a big role too. I'm not
He
sure
did.
if he's
My
still in your
father-in-law.
life. Oh yeah, you ended up marrying. Well, there you
I
go.
did. Yes, it's my
So
it's
your
my father-in-law.
father-in-law, he must feel pretty proud, and then he's looked at you through all these years and all the businesses you built and the tremendous success you've had. That must be pretty nice for him.
He and I are extremely close. We talk on a regular basis. We watch sports together. We talk together. One of the real sad parts of where we're in with the lockdown now is I haven't seen him in about 6 months.
Right.
Which has been too bad because he's been a real positive influence
I bet.
for sure because he's just again a really quality person
That's
uh,
awesome.
and somebody that I was very lucky because as you know when you're starting a business as you know, people think that you're the boss so you have all the answers. Man, it's lonely at the top. Like there's no like you're at the top and people come to you assuming that you have the answers to things, and a lot of times you don't. You're figuring
Right.
things out too, especially when you're in rapid growth mode of your business. So I've had the opportunity to do that and work with him. I joined an organization called YPO that's been very influential in my life over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, where we've had other people within, different businesses, but all, presidents of other companies. And we're in a similar, they're in a similar position that I'm in. People are coming to them because they think they have all the answers. So
Right.
it's great for us to sort of share ideas, things that we're talking about, and see if we can find some common ground or have some shared experiences that can kind of help us navigate through.
Yeah, I've actually heard about the YPO quite a bit, and a bunch of my friends are in it, and they always talk about and rave about it. And one of the things that I always find pretty interesting about people talking about the YPO is that even though it's built around a lot of hugely successful, executives and CEOs and whatnot, it's that the forum, and apparently from what I've been told, is highly intimate, and the idea is about sharing intimate level, quite a bit of it, deeply personal and being really vulnerable.
Yep.
And I find tremendous value in that because that when you are able to be vulnerable, it humbles you. And when you're humble, you don't pretend like you have all the answers. You say, all right, you know what, guys, I know I'm supposed to have this answer, but I just don't. Let's
Mhm.
go figure it out. Let's bring in somebody that does. And I think humility is also one of the reasons why you're successful, but it's also one of the reasons why other people can trust you, because when you have the balls to say no when you don't know, then they can trust you when you say yes, because they've seen you say no when you don't know. So when you say yes, you're like, he must know, otherwise he would have just said no. And
Yeah.
uh, that's something else that I like to talk about sometimes, that significance and importance of saying no, or saying I don't know, or saying we got to ask somebody.
Mhm. Yeah, and from my standpoint, what we really try to do is at our firm is, I mean, the group of people that are part of my executive team, we really do talk through a number of the issues. It
Right.
isn't just the directive comes from the top. It's we everybody will come to the meeting with a certain perspective. The only sort of hard and fast rule that I have is, if there's, if it leads to a healthy debate, these are all good things. But once we leave the boardroom or the meeting room, we're a united front again, and we're
Right.
all live by the decisions that we made collectively, and
Hmm.
go from there.
One thing you said earlier, I want to jump back to is you're talking about the idea of having balance. You kind of briefly touched on that, about having balance in your life. And this is one of those topics that I would say there's a pretty split crowd on. Or you get some crowds that are historically like me, where to them balance is a silly word and it's all just work, 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 work. And then you get the other half, and a lot of things change too. Like for instance, I certainly don't work as much now as I did, 10 years ago or 12 years ago or even 7 years ago. Over time, more people join the organization. They take up a lot of the work that you used to do. Everything becomes a lot more structured. So things change as time goes by. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And like for me, it's always been like, it's okay if you're not super balanced at the beginning, because you'd have to put a certain amount of effort into the business to launch it and to get it going. But then over time, you do want to get to a point where you have a bit more balance, whatever that means to you. So I'd love to get your thoughts on some of that as well.
Well, I mean, I think it picks up on one of the comments you made that we just finished talking about. The truth is, I don't know. Like the challenge that I have more than anything else, and I know in talking to colleagues, as an example through my YPO group, when you are invested and love your business as much as like I do, it's also kind of your hobby.
Right.
And if you get the business to a point where it's the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning and the last thing you think about, and you're happy about that, then I think that's the ultimate determining factor. If you're missing out on something else, and you're not happy about the fact that that's the first thing that you think about when you wake up and the last thing you think about before you go to sleep. For me, I struggle with that because as much as Aligned is my baby. It's been fantastic. It's provided so many great things to me and my family. I've got three daughters, a wife. We are very, very close. And I have to do a much better job of making sure that those people feel as appreciated by me as I do about my business, because I do really appreciate my business and everything that it's provided us. But it's not an easy one. It's a struggle. For me, just speaking personally, what I try to do is, yes, I will work 12 plus hours a day during the week. And I try to do very, very little on the weekend. And the weekend is my time that I spend with Jill and the girls. Um, from time to time, the challenge is it doesn't leave a lot of time for just me outside of work.
Right.
So from time to time, things like my physical fitness is not where it's pretty good right now, but it's not where, maybe it needs to be, or I'm not, maybe I'm not golfing as much as I would like, or something like that. So it's really hard to juggle the time.
I want to ask you two more questions, man. You've been very generous already with your time and your comments, but two more questions. One is, what part of your business and running it do you love the most, and what part do you find the most taxing?
Great question. For sure, what I like the most, I'm a very, very competitive person.
Right.
There's nothing that I like more than being underestimated. So because I'm very competitive, what I like the most is winning. And there's lots of different measuring sticks for that. The fact that my firm is the fastest growing IROC firm in Canada, um, that makes me really, really happy because I know that we're doing the right things and we're executing well. What I don't like is I don't like the business necessarily that we're in, because I think too often the decisions that are made in financial services are not about what's in the best interest of the client. It's about how does the firm make the most amount of money, and
Right.
that is certainly a measuring stick. It's not the measuring stick as far as I'm concerned.
No, that's very well said, and that's something that's very much true of this industry. So I'm glad you highlighted.
Mhm.
There are a lot of great people in this industry too. Sometimes it gets a bad rap, man, but
Does.
there are a lot of good people too, and it's important to find those right people and work with those right people. Normally, towards the end of our conversation, I'd like to ask people to sort of recap you know, their golden nuggets, their sort of the rules to live by. But you've already given us so much, and I don't want to sort of be an asshole and just put you on the spot for you
Sure.
to remember everything. But I'm just gonna, I was taking notes, and so I'll just repeat them quickly, and then feel free to edit the list as you wish. But your word is your bond. Treat others as you want to be treated. Surround yourself with good people who share common beliefs and values. Trust them. Treat them really well. Get them to treat the rest their team really well. Create your culture through it. Make sure you have a community. You have some involvements with your family. You have a certain balance that you can be comfortable with, and then really love what you do. Wake up in the morning loving it, go to sleep loving it, and then that's what you need.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just add maybe one last thing, and that is that in my experience, there are no shortcuts.
I
World is
love.
small.
Thank you.
The world is small. The industry that we're in is very, very small.
Super smart.
It has taken me, I've been in this industry since '94. So it's a long time, 27 years of trying to do things the right way. I could lose my reputation in 27 minutes by
Love
cutting
that you said that,
corners,
man.
or not doing the things that helped get our firm to where it is today. I've had lots of help by some great people, but I mean, there are no shortcuts.
I
There's just
love that you said that, man. Thank you. Like fuck shortcuts. There are no shortcuts, and a lot of times, especially in today's world with social media, you tend to see like the best of exaggerated versions of success and exaggerated versions of whatever, and people think, oh, it must be easy, there must be a shortcut, but there really isn't, man. There really isn't. I mean, look, at the end of the day, somebody wins the lottery, so I suppose that's a shortcut. But outside of those extremes, you gotta work hard. You gotta work hard. You gotta stay true to your core values, do all the right things, and allow time to play its part too. So thank you so much for sharing that, man. And you have been awesome. I would love to be able to do this with you and Jack. And hey, let's not forget, I got to bug Mike at some point too,
absolutely.
your other partner. But you guys are awesome, and I can speak from experience that everything you said about your culture, about how you guys are, is 100% true. You guys are absolute gentlemen to deal with, and I appreciate your time today, and I appreciate the culture you're promoting, and I appreciate the good name you're creating for the rest of us in the industry. So thank you.
Very much appreciate it, Ali. Anytime.
Thank you, Chris. All the best, man. Take care.
Okay, take care.